Amazon Stage.
Hi everyone, my name is Maciek and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Amazon Stage. We are recording here in our Gdańsk Amazon Development Center, Poland. Today we are diving into another topic that is shaping the future of almost every industry. That is data that makes AI useful, safe, and scalable. And we have just the perfect guest for that. Joining me today is Brent Gregory, Director at Amazon Relational Database Services at AWS, with 25 years of experience in software engineering and machine learning. Brent is a seasoned engineering leader, formerly with large telecoms and R&D firms, just before joining AWS about a decade ago. At AWS, he has led relational database service teams and spearheaded privacy and data migration initiatives. He has also been involved in AWS Database Migration Service, a team with a large local presence here in our Gdańsk office. Welcome, Brent.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. So first question, which is our traditional question, we always ask our guests, what do they have for breakfast typically?
Eggs.
Just eggs?
Eggs, that's it.
How many eggs?
3 eggs. I like the protein and coffee, of course.
All right.
Lots of coffee.
Awesome. Well, so I'd like to ask about your story, right? So you joined AWS roughly 10 years ago, but how did you get to that moment?
So I'll start at the beginning. I started my career at Nortel when it was actually existed back in 2001. I'll date myself a little bit. And after about 6 years there, I moved to another telecommunications company, Tektronix Communications, where we developed service assurance platforms. And as part of working at that company, I had an opportunity to do an expat role in Dublin, Ireland. Our site leader had left to go to EC2 networking.
There you go.
So while I was there, I got to know this individual, and he's like, Amazon has some pretty interesting work over here. You should come take a look at the roles that we have open. So I went back to the United States, applied for a role, and I wound up in the e-commerce foundation team on the retail side of the business. And the first role was leading an organization called CloudTune. At that point, this was 2016. We had gone through the first Prime Day, and unfortunately, we had not scaled enough for that, and we had a little bit of an outage, if you will, in the middle of the event. So our team was built to help forecast the demand and then build automated scaling solutions for these peak events like Prime Day, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Diwali, Boxing Day, all of these different sales events that required a lot more capacity. So I did that for about 3 years. Then GDPR became a thing. And Amazon, obviously, we have a little bit of personal data that we process about our customers. So I had the opportunity to build what was called the CDO Privacy organization that focused on building controls and vending capabilities to our end customers to help them exercise their privacy rights for GDPR and then the various other privacy regimes worldwide, inclusive of the US. And then after doing that for about 3 years, again, it's time for a change. I came into the RDS organization where I currently lead a database migration service, as you mentioned. Our mission is to help customers that are trying to move into the cloud migrate their database workloads.
Right. And so in your experience, right, so you had a very diverse range of experiences, right? Like from scaling, Amazon.com site on these like large events, large traffic events, right? To now working on AI. Like what is the most surprising kind of learning or insightful learning, you could say?
I would say in prior companies and prior roles, very hard technical challenges, but they were a little more finite to solve. At Amazon and AWS, the scale of the problems are so much larger. It really forces you to think differently about how do I actually tackle these problems. One solution rarely, if ever, is sufficient, but we have such a wide variety of use cases that we serve that you can't have a bespoke solution for every use case either. So thinking about how to break down these complex problems so that you can really focus on the most important critical few and come up with enough solutions to truly solve the issues, but obviously do this in a customer-obsessed way, in a way that delights our customers. That's been the biggest challenge and the biggest insight I would say I've learned through the 10 years that I've been here.
Right. And I can imagine currently with, more and more of these AI solutions, is scaling more difficult for AI?
I think that it's scaling is more challenging in a different way. I think that AI is definitely going to pave a path for us to be able to achieve scaling outside of AI in ways that we technologically just couldn't do it before. We were reaching human limits, if you will, on what we can automate away. Scaling within AI is different because we all know, as anyone that's tried to use it, it's not perfect, and it will hallucinate for you. Right. But it'll also do it in such a way that when you, at first glance, everything looks very, very correct, which can lead you into a false sense of security. So I think that, as we adopt these technologies to think about how do we want to be able to attack these large problems that we do here at the company, we have to be very clever in how we apply AI to those problems.
Right. So, at the AI event, right, do we observe like more demand for relational databases? Like, is that something connected?
Absolutely. More people understand now that without access to their data, the generative AI is going to be limited for them. Therefore, more people want to get into cloud database services like RDS. And for us, that just means more demand for more migrations, helping customers get access to it. There are technologies like pgvector, part of Postgres, allow you to create knowledge bases on top of this, right? Customers are really, really interested in getting access to those kind of capabilities so that they can then go innovate for their customers.
So Brent, I wanted to ask specifically, right, because I guess many of our listeners and viewers could be interested in that, right? So from your time in CloudTune, right, like how did that shape your thinking about scaling for these large events, right? I assume these peaks happen like sometimes very rapidly. You need to scale super fast. There is this, scaling time. How are you thinking about that?
That's an excellent question. Let me give you a little bit of a story on how this all happened for me. So I show up at Amazon, and I'm brand new, and I don't know anything about the company. Honestly, I'd never used a cloud service in my life, okay? So now here I am, I'm responsible for scaling for peak events. Like, what does EC2 stand for? I don't even know at this point, right? So the thing that was most profound to me was the amount of ambiguity that I was going to have to deal with. How do we even know how much we need to scale to? What's the demand going to look like? So we put a team together, and this is usually how most solutions start at the company. Let's put a small team together, narrowly focus them on a problem space, and let them innovate. So it's exactly what we did. We have a team of data scientists and economists to figure out what is a demand signal that we can predict. One that we can measure, one that we can predict. And we'll use this as a proxy to try to figure out, okay, therefore, if demand was here for this event, it's going to be here for that event. We scaled to this level before, we need to scale to that level now. So that was one level of ambiguity, and how to strip away the ambiguity and break things down into smaller problems that are solvable. That's kind of the key learning there on the first piece. Then the next part is, okay, we have tens of thousands of services, literally. They all use different types of instances. The code is different on each one of them. It scales differently. They have different scaling characteristics, if you will. How do we go develop a solution that's going to work for all this variety? And again, small team, our scaling planner team, came up with a novel solution that could actually predict, using our forecasted metric, how a service behaves as that metric changes on a daily basis, right? Which was novel, patented technology by the team now, which was great. Again, we have to strip away ambiguity and focus, shrink the problem, if you will, to a core set of services. Then we started adding more sophistication into that tool to accommodate different scaling patterns. The first one was we scale by CPU and traffic. The second one was memory, and so it goes, right? And over time, we were able to accommodate all of the services that needed to scale for these peak events. Then we had to get into the supply chain side of things. We started placing orders to EC2 that were fairly large. I think the first one that we put in, if you ran the math, we ordered enough racks of servers to fill up 2 NFL football fields if you perfectly pack them together for a 24-hour sales event. That's a massive amount of equipment for one event, right? And as soon as the event's over, please take it all back, right? Because we want our external customers using that. So we had to work with lead times and how do we optimize that. Again, a big ambiguous problem because external customers were placing orders. We're placing these mammoth-sized orders How do we prevent them from running, out of inventory and then turning away either us or external customers, right? So we had to develop solutions for that. Again, how do we shrink the problem into something that's solvable, put a small focused team on it? And we did. We did. Since 2016, we've never underscaled for an event. So, it's a testament to the team's ingenuity and their creativity and their dedication to solving the problem.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And then does the fact that you have so many kind of use cases I assume it makes it harder, right? Like you need to account for more edge cases and
You do.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. It's complex whenever you're trying to break down these complicated workloads into discrete units. I would say that part is definitely challenging. However, the contra to that is that I believe with the AI technologies, once you've broken it down to a sufficiently simplified level, you can really go a lot faster now and accommodate more of these edge cases at a smaller scope, if you will, or blast radius, if you will. And that, I believe, is a pattern that I'm starting to see emerge in how our teams are using AI that's really leading to some great success.
And can you give me an example? Because you mentioned these solutions, right? And trying to boil them down to really simple. Can you give me like an example of what would that practically mean?
Absolutely. Let's use database migration as an easy example to wrap your mind around. The whole process starts with a customer deciding, hey, I might want to migrate my database to a cloud. Yeah. It doesn't end until their application and their database is migrated into production. Right. There are millions of steps, quite honestly, between those two, the start and the end, if you will, of this entire process. What we're doing with our team is that we're looking at each individual step in the process, the first being assessment. How do we actually get an assessment of the existing database so that we can help the customer scope what is the work going to be required to do the migration, and one, can they afford it, and is it realistic? Right. The application space, how do we actually change the application and make it more cloud capable as part of its migration as well, and doing the two in concert, right? Each one of these different steps, we're applying different agentic experiences with an orchestration layer that coordinates and executes these smaller components that are also powered by sub-agents, if you will, with humans in the loop at the appropriate steps. And that's a pattern we're seeing great success with there as well.
Got it. And do you think we are far away from a place or a flow which is completely automated or like led by some agent, or how?
I would say it's hard to give you a definitive answer in the abstract. I think there are some areas where it's pretty obvious, like, yes, these will be definitely automatable, soon, if not now, or within, the near future. There are some things that are sufficiently complex where, when we look at applying generative AI, the first thing I try to think about is, okay, what is the cost of being wrong? Because these hallucinations can really lead you down a bad path. And when you look at areas where there's high risk or high impact if you fail, those are going to take longer. Right. We have to be safer. We have to develop technologies within the AI infrastructure itself to allow us to attack those use cases. And that's going to take a little bit longer, in my opinion.
Got it. When we are having those discussions around AI and these multiple episodes which we have of this podcast, we are touching a topic around the informational noise around AI, right? So kind of to the point which you mentioned, I guess everybody has their own kind of evaluation assessment of the technology, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of, I would say, maybe not intended misinformation, but well-intended opinions around that. How do you deal with that in your job?
For us, within my organization, I highly encourage experimentation. Look, this space is moving very fast. Right. The truths that were true yesterday are not necessarily true today anymore because the pace of technology is evolving, and the struggle is not really understanding what it can and can't do, it's just keeping pace with the volume of the change. Right. So when we talk about things like misinformation and things like that around generative AI, be a truth seeker is kind of what I tell my teams. try the technology yourself, try to figure out how to apply it to the use case that you're responsible for, learn from others, collaborate, communicate broadly, both listening and sharing information. As you discover it, together we will solve more interesting, increasingly more interesting, should I say, use cases together as the technology continues to evolve. 2 years or 3 years ago, when people talked about AI, they would think, okay, there's a lot of possibility here, but it still felt a little bit like a toy.
Right.
But look what's happened in a very short amount of time. The toy is now specifically a tool that is being used everywhere, and many companies, inclusive of us, are struggling and succeeding in many cases, taking generative AI to help us deliver better products for our customers. And it's real. 2 or 3 years ago, there's a lot of skepticism. Today, there's actually results.
Yep. I guess what changed also is the ease of AI implementation, right? And I guess really many companies work to do that. We have Bedrock, right? But I think that is also a very important change.
I agree with you. I think that that's the real opportunity for us, and specifically with DMS, that's what we are doing, is how do we take something that is requires quite a bit of manual effort, take AI and apply it to this use case to simplify the experience for the end customer, while at the same time, expanding our coverage of the types of databases that we can migrate, but also raising the success rate of those migrations, making it faster and easier and simpler for our customers to adopt the cloud.
Which I think is a great place to discuss schema conversion tool.
Yes.
Right? That was developed here in Gdańsk, right?
Right here.
Awesome.
Yes.
Tell us more about that.
So schema conversion is a portion of the DMS service that helps customers that are on commercial databases, primarily like Oracle or SQL Server, convert over to open source databases like Postgres. It's quite a challenging feat because Oracle and SQL Server are very mature products, very feature-rich products. So is Postgres. But they're not the same. There are capabilities that exist in those commercial databases that don't exist in Postgres, and vice versa. So converting all of the database objects from these, what I will call legacy databases, even though they're still in active development, it's not a one-to-one activity, meaning that there are things that these can do that Postgres cannot. But also helping customers make that transition so they can break free from the commercial licenses they're paying to these companies and adopt open source. That's the magic that schema conversion brings. Now, but prior to generative AI, we have a rules-based approach. Think more of an if this, then that type of logic embedded, where if I see this type of schema, this is the parallel, I'll do the conversion. It's very deterministic, which is great. The problem is that it doesn't give you 100% coverage. For reInvent 2024, we launched a generative AI capability on top of our rules-based approach. Rules-based, we were getting on average about 80% of the database objects would convert, and we were able to get somewhere between 90 and 95 with this first version of generative AI that we input into it. Since then, we've released some additional generative AI capabilities and gotten that number up to 98, 99%. Wow. So that kind of gives you some sense of the opportunity that we're actually seizing here by using generative AI on top of what we already have.
Awesome. And I assume, I guess just to give our listeners or viewers kind of more detail, right? I assume at that stage where you've had like an 80% accuracy, you didn't really control what is that 80%, right?
Exactly.
So you might have been missing very important elements of the database, right?
Absolutely. The databases themselves are standardized, right? So I can pick up an administrator user guide and understand this is how their schemas work. The challenge comes in is that people get involved and they start adding things, and many times they don't use these databases the way that they were intended to be used. And that's where we're seeing generative AI really help us accommodate these kind of, I would call it non-standard or atypical use cases, in helping us still get conversions and maximize the conversion rate and minimize the amount of manual effort that's left to get that last 1 or 2%.
Yeah. Is the last 5% the most challenging one?
Always, right? Because these are the special snowflake, if you will, use cases. Maybe one day we'll get to 100%. I can see that it's probably a closer reality than I would have thought in a few years ago, and all because of generative AI.
Well, I wish you achieve 100% really soon.
I have confidence in the team they will.
Awesome. Okay, cool. I want to move to a little bit different topic, but very related, right? So there's this belief that, which I think we all submit to that, is that the model is only as good as the data you input, right? So what does that responsible data management look like to you in your organization?
It's a great question, and coming from the privacy guy, right? You're right, without good data, without clean data, ideally, the models are virtually useless to us, right? The advent of generative AI heightens an already heightened sense of responsibility for us to do the right thing with people's data. It adds new elements now. As one ready example, many people talk about in the industry, when we first started using generative AI, it was really more of one-shot prompting. We're treating it kind of like a glorified Google search. People are like, I don't know that I really want to, load my data into this interface, because who knows what they're training their models. Are they using my personal data, and then can someone else come behind me and query and see my data? We've had to think through that as a company. Within our service, we make sure that we never ever allow that to happen. We don't train our data, train on our customers' data. And we make sure that when we try not to ever actually handle our customers' data if we can stand it. In cases where there's no way to avoid it, we do this with the ultimate high security controls in place. I think we have to continue to embrace that mindset as we move forward with generative AI. Sometimes this is going to cause us to go a little slower. We won't be able to innovate quite as quickly as if we were to able just broadly use all the data that was available to us. But I think the trade-off is worth it, because trust is very, very difficult to earn from your customers, but it is very easy to lose. It's not worth the risk.
This brings us to the GDPR topic, right, which you are a specialist in. What does actually a development which is privacy first mean?
I think being privacy first in development is, first, you want to minimize the exposure that you have to anyone's personal data, whether it is an employee, a customer, a supplier, et cetera, et cetera. Doing so often places some handcuffs, if you will, on what you are able to do.
Right.
However, it also presents an opportunity. It forces us to think more deeply and passionately about how we can handle customers' data in a responsible way and still get the outcome that ultimately gives them the delightful experiences that we're trying to deliver. It forces us to innovate in ways that we may not have tried to do so had we not had these restrictions or guidelines in place. At the end of the day, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're protecting our customers' data every time we're handling, which starts with data minimization, obfuscation. There's lots of different techniques that we can apply to try to ensure that our security controls are in place, that we never share it and we never use it for purposes other than what were originally intended.
Right. And you mentioned most of the times you're trying to do development in such a way where there is no access to customer data, right? In cases that such access is required, how does that look like?
Begins with encryption. Encrypt everything in rest, in transit, and everything in between. Obfuscation every place where we can. We will, like in schema conversion is a great example. When we scan a database, obviously there's customer data in there. We picked only the pieces that we need. When we pick a piece, if we run it through a classification to see is there actual customer data, and immediately obfuscate it.
Right.
We don't want to see it, we don't want to touch it, we don't want to have the risk of mishandling it. In the cases where it's unavoidable, then we hold the ultimate security bar. We encrypt everything, we restrict human access. There's a long list of controls that we put in place, and that list is continually growing as well as we develop new capabilities within the company on secure data handling. But for us, we pride ourselves on being the tip of the spear, if you will, in those technologies and adopting them.
Is there would you say there's a trade-off in between privacy and speed of development?
Absolutely, 100%. If customer trust wasn't something that we had to be concerned with, obviously we would be able to go faster. Having access to raw unfiltered data would give us the ability to develop solutions more quickly and get them to market more quickly. However, the risk isn't worth the reward, in my opinion. So we choose not to do that.
Yeah. Do you think it's you're likely working with companies around the world, right? Do you see any specific kind of limitations in the European space, like where companies are hitting some limitations?
Oh, for sure. I would say that like data localization is a huge thing within the EU countries. That makes things very difficult for us because with many of the systems that we integrate with, we don't necessarily know exactly what country that data store is sitting in. We don't know what country that information, if we have a citizen's data, what nationality are they? So those present challenges where we have to invest in infrastructure that's able to detect and ensure that we keep data localized is one example. But yes, it's always evolving, and it is adding more complexities in our development. But again, it all comes back to customer trust. It's not worth losing their trust. We will abide by these expectations the customers have.
Right. And do you think our customers are also having a higher bar as they are, as more and more people talk about it, and this is a more prevalent topic?
Absolutely. I think anytime there's new ambiguity comes into the equation, I think that privacy kind of goes back to the forefront, if you will.
Right.
And with generative AI and what is it doing with my data? How is it storing in? Are companies selling my information? All of those same questions that we've been asked before rear themselves again because we have this new technology and people genuinely want to understand what is safe for me to do with it and what's not. I don't think that that's ever going to change. I think that it kind of goes in waves. When GDPR came out, there was a lot of energy and excitement around it and how do we handle this? How do we respond to this?
Yeah.
And then over the time it's kind of decayed a little bit. Then generative AI back to the top, here it comes again.
Right.
That pattern is likely going to repeat itself with the technology turns that we see again and again and again.
Yeah, likely also with different fields in which AI is being implemented in, right?
For sure. The more personal the data, I would say the higher the awareness and concern that it could possibly misuse my data in ways that I wouldn't even consider today.
Yeah.
Right?
Cool. Let's switch topics a little bit, right? So you're day-to-day based out of Austin, Texas,
I am.
right? Now you're in Gdańsk.
Yes.
You have teams around the world in Gdańsk as well. How does that collaboration look like on a daily basis? What does it mean today to be a leader in a very global environment?
That's a great question. The first thing that I think comes to mind is how do you keep teams pulling together shoulder to shoulder when you have time zone separation? The communication gets a little more challenging when you're physically separated. It starts with organizational design for us. We try our best to have complete ownership of components or sub-services within our service within one site, inclusive of Gdańsk. Like schema conversion is only developed here, as one example. I believe that it's important that each site have its own kind of identity,
right?
So that they have ownership of an end-to-end piece of the product. Ideally, in some cases, complete ownership of the end-to-end product itself. But I feel like that's been a key to our success here. To be able to efficiently innovate and keep abreast of the changes that are happening in the marketplace and stay slightly ahead.
Got it. And so it's to some extent it's the already adopted single-threaded ownership concept within Amazon,
exactly.
Right? Did it change in any way? So we've went through a large change with COVID, right? And post-COVID, RTO, return to office.
Of course.
How does that work today for your teams?
So the one constant at this company is change.
Yes.
I would say more so than most companies out there. And this whole return to office and post-COVID world that we live in, it's very different. During COVID, we were hiring people, allowing them to live in pretty much anywhere they wanted. Now we're asking people to come back together. Before, you absolutely must maintain distance from each other. Now we're asking for you to have more face-to-face collaboration, right? Things will change again and again and again. And the one thing that I really appreciate about this service, this team, this company is that we embrace that change. We will adapt. I believe that today, the post-COVID world, I prefer personally. I've seen that what I believe to be the job satisfaction improving as people are able to see each other. Every time I come to visit a site, inclusive of Gdańsk, I feel very welcomed. It's great to see you. I'm glad that we have questions for you that I may not be comfortable asking you across video conference. Those opportunities only exist because we're able to go see each other and work closely together, and I really appreciate that.
It's an interesting kind of personal observation of mine that airports are busy again.
Very
right?
busy, too busy in certain cases.
In some cases. Cool. So also a little bit about, like, in a personal sense, where do you think AI is headed? Right? There's obviously this I would say, like, a concern, right, of many people, like, how automation, generally speaking, affects our lives, right, and the life of our kids.
Sure.
Yeah.
I've got two different kind of schools of thought because I am a parent. I have four kids, and two just went to college, and it's very careful on what major they selected, right? Because it is a concern. Is this going to automate my job away, right? Yeah. I do think that is a real risk for some areas, but I choose to take more of a contrarian view than most. Okay. I don't look at it as this is going to automate my job away. I look at this as going to make me far more productive at my job. Right. My job will be different. Yep. The things I do day to day will be very, very different. However, I will be able to accomplish more things in this new way of working than I was in the old. And I think that, looking for the opportunity to embrace that concept is super important for all of us, because anytime something as revolutionary as generative AI comes along, the first thing is, what about my livelihood? What about my job, right? These are natural things. Yep. We have to address those, but we also have to take, a broader view of things as well. So
you mentioned that two of your children actually were selecting, a certain major in college, yep. Right? Like, so what maybe you can share also for, listeners who are listening, like, what did you consider as I would say, input in the prioritization?
I wanted areas for them specifically where they would still have the opportunity to use generative AI, but the risk was very low that it was going to completely automate away their world. My son has chosen professional aviation, so while we have autopilot, and we've had it for a while, I still want a human being out there, okay? The cost of being wrong is very high.
Preferably two as well.
Exactly, right? His twin sister, my daughter, chose to be a nurse. So that's another job where AI can help, but it can't really completely automate away, at least not in the foreseeable future with the current state of the technology. It's
quite an interesting, maybe it's actually just a surprising fact that the professions with the most human contact, right, are the ones which are most likely to remain very similar to what they are today, right?
I think that they're going to still exist. I think they're going to be very different in how they operate. Like, take nursing, for example. Generative AI has millions of, endless possibilities, probably trillions of possibilities in the medical space, right? And how we provide care to people that need it. I think it'll improve dramatically, but at the end of the day, it's going to be very difficult to replace the human touch, right? And I think that's important. I don't think that we should try to honestly replace it.
Yeah, agree on that. Cool, Brent, let's move to some rapid fire questions. So first, I'd like to ask you about the thing you think is the most misunderstood thing about AI.
Hallucinations will always be there. I think that's very misunderstood. I think we'll solve it.
Now you need to expand that a little bit.
What I've seen is that when people are using generative AI initially, let's go back to the prior example of these kind of one-shot prompts using ChatGPT. You get these examples the answers that come back, they look great, but at closer inspection, they're very, very problematic. Recently, there are more sophisticated techniques of using generative AI that have really lowered the hallucination rate dramatically. It's still there, right? It's still there. Will we get to zero? I think we will. I think we'll get to a point maybe soon. Others don't believe that I talk to in the industry. They're like, no, it's never going to be quite that last 1%, right? It's going to be so hard.
I guess hallucinations are a little bit counterintuitive to humans, right? Because typically when a human really doesn't know, they are quiet or they don't respond, right?
Exactly, and they certainly don't respond very forcefully and very intelligently as they appear to, it lulls you to sleep a little bit, if you will.
Okay, now this one might be controversial. Cloud or on-prem?
Cloud, for sure, right?
Why?
You're asking the guy from AWS, right? Speed of development, flexibility, cost optimization, I could go on and on. There's just millions and millions of benefits to being in a cloud environment. I think, quite honestly, even though our data centers do consume quite a bit of energy these days, I think it's ecologically responsible to be able to try to optimize the amount of compute that we provide to everyone. Right. I think it's important for society, it's important for a company, it's important for individuals.
Why do you think there is still so many on-prem installations?
I think that it's easy for us that are in these technology positions where we're talking about this on a daily basis to assume that the entirety of the world understands what we understand, and many don't. Okay, there's still, I don't know what the exact percentages are right now, but I would say we're probably somewhere around 30–40% of even the database workloads have migrated to a cloud.
Right.
Even AWS or OCR competitors, right? So there's still a lot to be done migrating existing things, but people are still launching things new every day. I would say that the way that I see the industry going, most people are launching cloud native now. But yes, there are still some out there. It's going to be this way for a while. There are still valid use cases for on-premise. There are some things where, look, I just can't bear the risk of my data somehow winding up in a cloud environment where I don't have ultimate control. And those are okay. Those are okay. It doesn't have to be 100% cloud.
Right. But I think AWS has a solution for that as well, right?
We try to have a solution for all your problems.
Okay, cool. One book that shaped your thinking?
The Goal. Yes, this was one that I read in my MBA program many years ago. It's one that really, I don't know, it just kind of spoke to me. I won't summarize the book in too much depth, but at the end of the day, the point of the book is to help people understand how to go through process automation, right? And how to think about things to drive efficiency. At Amazon and AWS, we have this leadership principle, invent and simplify. This is all about the simplification once the invention has happened. And I think it's super important. The concepts I use on a daily basis for 25 years now. So it's one that I really enjoyed.
Cool. One which touched upon already, privacy, risk or opportunity?
Yes, I think it's both. I love to say yes when people ask me your questions, I'll admit it. I think there is, honestly, there's both. It's always a risk of inadvertently doing the wrong thing. I mean, there's bad actors in the world. There's a risk of that as well. For us, the risk that we are constantly working to remediate is, are we accidentally doing the wrong thing with people's data? With opportunity, not everyone holds the same bar on privacy as we do, and that is our opportunity to distinguish ourselves, to really be the world's leader in how we handle personal data.
Favorite thing about Poland?
The people. Easy answer.
You could say yes as well.
Yes. The people here are phenomenal, extremely intelligent, creative, very welcoming. I always enjoy being here.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, Brent, let's wrap it up with a quick lightning round of questions.
Okay, Brent, what is your favorite part of the Polish cuisine?
Yes. I can't narrow it to one thing. I love it all. It's great food.
So, Gregory, how do you see the future of DMS? Assuming that with help of GenAI, we will move all on-prem to the cloud sooner or later, how it will reflect on the purpose or functionality of the data migration service as we know it now?
That's an excellent question. Under the hood, what DMS is really doing is, in the heterogeneous, meaning I'm moving from one type of database to another, we're converting. And then the second piece is we're moving the data from database source to database target. Once we've migrated all of the existing databases, which is a novel goal that we're after, right? The underlying piece of data replication, that technology that we've developed to actually do the data movement piece, there's a ton of opportunity to extend that into other novel use cases. One thing that we've developed as an example, we have a Zero-ETL integration between relational databases and Redshift. Several of those sources are powered by technology developed by the DMS team that's also used within the DMS service.
Okay, Brent, in a big tech, there is a visible race for productivity and effectiveness with GenAI. How I can deliver more and faster using GenAI tools. So how do you measure the performance of organization in GenAI era, and what do data tell you today?
I think measuring productivity is very difficult because the things that our software engineers do on a day-to-day basis is pretty diverse, engineer to engineer, team to team, right? I think it's really about looking at what use cases can we solve with these technologies that we weren't able to solve before. The example, of schema conversion only being able to do about 80% is a great one. Now we're able to get to 98, 99%. I think it's really about, if we want to measure productivity, is what are the things that we can do now that were just simply impossible before? And that's really where the focus needs to be for AWS and for our team.
Okay, Brent, thanks so much for joining us for this incredible conversation. It's been a masterclass, really, in what it means to build responsibly at scale. And to everyone watching or listening, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, or Audible. New episodes of Amazon Stage drop regularly, and you can explore the stories, people, and technologies shaping our future. Thank you.
Amazon Stage.